What is up, guys? Dakota here, and welcome back to the Driven Mad channel. So today, what I thought we'd do is do a POV video about what it's like and what it has been like to daily drive my Bronco. So for those of you who are new to the channel, this is a 2021 Ford Bronco 2-door with the hardtop, the Sasquatch package, Lux package. So we're running on 35s. It has the turbo V6, 10-speed automatic, and the 4.7 final drive. So what has it been like to daily drive? So if you're coming from, say, a Wrangler, for example, or let's say just a truck or maybe even a 4Runner, one of the things that you'll notice that I've kind of seen as a trend with the Ford vehicles that I've had, the Raptor and my Shelby, although the Shelby's a little bit of a different story, but the throttle response is actually pretty good and pretty responsive. So, you know, if you just dip your foot in a little bit, the car starts to accelerate. You know, it's pretty responsive, and it's pretty eager to get going, which I personally like. If you're not used to that, then you will be it will kind of throw you off a little bit, or you might be a little jumpy. But again, compared to, say, like a Wrangler, the throttle response is a lot more responsive. It's a lot more ready to go, and, you know, ready to get you moving. Next would be, obviously, again, if you're coming from a Wrangler, would be the steering. As you know, you don't have to sit there and constantly adjust it. You know, it tends to just stay where it's at because of, obviously, the independent front suspension. So, you know, you don't have to be constantly adjusting it, you know, here and there all the time. You can just kind of leave it be. And for the most part, it's pretty light. It doesn't give you any feedback whatsoever. So if you're one of those people that really likes to have a steering wheel that gives you good feedback, this is not it. Which, again, this is an off-roader. You shouldn't really be expecting to get fantastic feedback in something like this with 35-inch tires and you know, big, heavy, beadlock capable wheels. It's just not going to give you that level of sophistication when it comes to the driving dynamics. But for the most part, it's very light. You can turn it with one finger if you want. And once you get to about 90 degrees, then it kind of loads up, because then now you're dealing with the weight of the tires and the wheels. But for the most part, the steering is very good. Just to kind of show you guys here a little bit of what this thing is kind of like with the throttle response. So here we go. So you can have a little bit of fun with it once you turn the traction control off, because if not, it will cut in super hard. But you can just dip into the throttle, get it to kick out because of its short little wheelbase on the 2-door, and you're gonna have some fun with it on your daily drive. So real quick, as far as this video goes, I'm not necessarily going to touch on things like build quality or anything like that, because I've done that in plenty of other videos. I'll leave a link up here so you can check it out. This is mainly going to be about driving dynamics and kind of how this thing is to daily drive. So another thing we should talk about as a daily driver is suspension. So again, this is a Sasquatch equipped Bronco, and I've been driving this thing, daily driving it, for about a year and a half now. I've got almost 17,000 miles on it, and the suspension is really dialed in very nicely. It rides much better than, say, a 2-door Wrangler. Doesn't quite ride as good as, say, my 392 that's a 4-door, but it's great for things like if you're not paying attention and you just happen to go, say, this way, and you get up on the curb and then you're like, oh no. I mean, you don't even notice it. I mean, it's just, it handles that so easily, it's not even funny. But it's dialed in really well. Again, for a 2-door, you know, shorter wheelbase vehicle, it rides well, as these seats are extremely comfortable. I mean, you can sit in these things, which I have, for, you know, 10 plus hours, and you feel comfortable the whole time. You have plenty of room, leg room, you know, width-wise. You know, it is a little bit wider than a Wrangler. As far as ride quality and overall comfort goes, it is very comfortable and very easy to daily drive. And again, with how easily and eager it is to kind of get up to speed with that short gearing and the throttle response and the low end torque, because that's where most of this engine's power is kind of low to mid-range power. It's very effortless to daily drive. You know, you don't have to really do much. You can just kind of sit back, relax, and drive. Before we get to some other things like fuel economy and whatnot, let's talk about briefly some handling characteristics. Again, it's still a off-roader, right? It's not supposed to be a sports car, but it handles pretty well. You know, it having a wide enough track to where it feels stable. You know, when you start to turn again, there's no real feel in the steering, and it feels very numb. But it's got a decent amount of weight to it. It's not overly light, but it also isn't super heavy. And overall, it handles about as well as you could hope a short wheelbase two-door off-roader would. It definitely gives you a lot more confidence than, say, the two-door Wrangler, but don't expect it to be a Miata or a GR86. All right, now let's talk about some of the stuff that is also important when you're talking about daily driving, which is fuel economy. So my daily commute is basically about this speed, about 40 miles an hour, you know, maybe 50, but with every, you know, the occasional traffic light. So stop and go with some, you know, driving to where I'm just kind of doing 40 miles an hour, nothing crazy, nothing super high speed. And as you guys can see, I average about, I'd say anywhere from 17 to 18 in the city, which is not that bad in the grand scheme of things. It's actually pretty solid. Now, obviously, a lot of that's going to depend on how you drive, right? If you've got a very heavy foot and you like to stay in the gas all the time, that number's going to drop. The best gas mileage I've been able to get was when we went from here to, or on the way from Moab back to Texas, which was about an 18-hour drive, and you know, that was doing about 70 to 75 miles an hour off and on, switching between the two. And the best I could get when we did that was 21 mpg, I believe. If you guys want, you can feel free to go back and check that video out, but I think it was about 21 mpg, which again, for having 35s, being the size that it is and being the shape that it is pretty solid. 21 miles per gallon is definitely not bad. That's pretty solid. Take that with a grain of salt, because obviously, depending on how you drive, it might not be anything like what you get. But just for me, as someone who doesn't floor this thing like it's, you know, my R8, for example, because it isn't, I have no need to constantly dip into the gas. But like I showed you earlier, if you want to, you can definitely get the tail to kick out and just have a little bit of fun. Then I'll show you guys a brief little acceleration here in a second, where we'll kind of get up to highway speeds, and then you guys will be able to hear the next thing that's pretty important when it comes to daily driving, which is sound. Okay, so here we go. Gonna come to a stop, and then we're just gonna floor it. So gets up to speed pretty good, you know, for being, again, the size that it is. Makes an okay noise, nothing crazy, but it does get up to speed very quickly with this 10 speed in that short gearing, and it does have a healthy amount of power. And now we're getting up to highway speeds. I'll get up to about 70 miles an hour to show you guys kind of what this thing sounds like. So here we are cruising at 70 miles an hour, and as you guys can hear, it's pretty loud. It's definitely not the quietest thing in the world, which again, I've mentioned before. So if you do a lot of highway commuting and noise and road noise and wind noise really bothers you, this is where, as I've mentioned many times, the Wranglers are much quieter. Now, from what I've been told and from what I've seen, the Bronco Raptor is a lot quieter, but that's also about $30,000 more than what this is. So speaking of, while we're at highway speeds, as you guys can see, you don't have to sit here and constantly monitor the wheel. You can kind of let it do its thing, and then, you know, it's not the same as the Jeep. And again, just with very, very minimal effort, you know, you can put a little bit of pressure, you start to go over, and it tracks very nicely. So if the steering has always bothered you in a Jeep, this is nowhere close to that. Now, when it comes to braking, this is another area that, again, it's not going to be a sports car, right? It's not going to have the most feel. It's not going to be necessarily the best calibrated for, yes, it gives me exactly what I want. For me personally, when I use the brakes, they definitely feel pretty spongy, and sometimes it kind of takes quite a bit of travel for me to get the actual braking that I'm looking for. For my liking, I like to have a little bit more initial bite, I think, for me personally. But overall, this thing has been very good to daily drive. Again, under about 55 miles an hour, you don't notice the wind noise with how comfortable these seats are and the suspension for a two-door vehicle compared to my two-door Wrangler. This is very nice. It's very comfortable. You can spend a lot of time in here and not get, you know, tired, not get worn out by, you know, the seats being uncomfortable or you not having enough room. There's a lot of room and a lot of space in here, and you get plenty of tech. Obviously, you know, the 12-inch screen, you get adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, you know, all that good stuff. Just be aware, if you are going to make a phone call while you're on the highway, you might have to yell a little bit more than you'd like to, just because of the wind and road noise, which I think if you just change these tires honestly to some KO2s, like some all-terrains, I think you'll get a little bit better road noise, because these do get pretty loud. And if you are cornering at a little bit of speed, you will definitely hear the tires kind of almost squealing in pain. They don't screech yet, but you can kind of hear them when you're... So overall, how has it been to daily drive the Bronco? Honestly, it's been great. My biggest complaint, which again, if you've seen any of my videos, you guys know, my biggest complaint is the wind noise when you're talking about driving. Other than that though, the ride is good, the powertrain is good. If you're on the fence about what it's like to daily drive, hopefully this helped you guys. Again, if you're coming from a Jeep, or you didn't buy a Jeep because you didn't like, for example, the steering or the ride of the two-door, this improves on both of those. So, you know, overall it has been very good to daily drive. The gas mileage with 35-inch tires has not been anywhere near as bad as you would think it would be. You would think that this would be way worse, and if you get smaller tires, chances are you can get even better gas mileage. So anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, and also check out the channel for some more videos. I got plenty on the Bronco as well as the Jeep and my Raptor. So anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.